Brett Allen here with the Brett Allen Show. Thanks for watching and listening. We have another fun Chicago Fire interview lined up. We're chatting with one of the newest cast members who has all the fans buzzing and talking, all the things. Of course, Jake Lockett, who plays Sam Carver. Jake, thanks so much for your time today. It's a pleasure to finally meet you and chat with you.
Yeah, you too, Brett. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, I mean, it's no surprise. People are fascinated with your character this season. Anytime somebody new comes along in this cast and the show and the storyline, people, I mean, the fans are just, I think, probably the most diehard of these shows, and probably any other show on TV, even probably I would dare say Grey's Anatomy. So let's talk about it. How has this been for you? I see you're doing lots of press and lots of things about this, but what has your experience been like so far, and how does it feel to be part of such a great show?
I feel lucky, honestly. I feel great. This show has been a pleasure to jump into. The whole cast and crew really pulls you in and just like gives you a hug when you get here, literally and literally and figuratively. It's a it's a pleasure. The character itself doesn't get a whole lot of hugs, but Jake's gotten a whole lot of hugs.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, well, maybe later down the road we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, you have great scene partners, and we've had a lot of the Chicago Fire cast and other Chicago cast on the show, but I'm very fascinated about your character because I think people, obviously, folks, no spoilers today, so we're not going to ask, the meaning of the scar or any of that, which I think people really want to know. But what sort of interested you and drew you into this character and sort of made you decide, because you've done a lot of great projects, but what sort of interested you in the character and made you go, I think I could probably do this as a storyteller?
Yeah, you know, Sam's a guy who's comes from a past that he's had to like get his hands dirty. He's not someone who came from a whole lot of privilege. He had a lot of he had to work his way through life and make things happen, which is really exciting for me because that resonates with me a lot. I come from a really small town, and you start working at an early age, so it was nice to be able to bring that experience that I have to this. As far as that goes, like it's been a pleasure. Chicago Fire is a show that I enjoy. I remember seeing the pilot of it. It's one of those things that I've always wanted to be a part of. And when the opportunity came, this character specifically, without a doubt, I jumped at it. It was a couple audition opportunities, and then this will happen. It's just the right time, the right place, the right role. And I have people that are firefighters in my family. I've lost people who are firefighters in my family, and it's one of those things where it's an honor, honestly, to be able to be a part of a show that does such a good job, in my opinion, of bringing a reality to this experience of life and the experience of being a firefighter that I don't think a lot of people know. Of course, we have the drama and the relationships and all that stuff, which is integral to like telling these stories. But, I think most firefighters would look at this and be like, oh, I appreciate the diligence to make this as real as one can possibly make it and still be a television show.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've always found fascinating about this show, in particular in the Dick Wolf universe, and really just in general, is the reality that you all do bring. As I mentioned, we've had several of your castmates on, including Miranda. We had her on a couple years ago, and she was telling us that I really want people to grasp this, that you all are actually driving the trucks and climbing the ladders and putting on the gear. These aren't stunt teams that are doing this. What was that first experience like for you, coming on to the set and having to, I don't think you've had to drive or anything yet, but you're definitely climbing and moving and hustling in the Chicago elements, which that in itself plays a character in this show for sure.
Definitely, that Chicago is a major character in this show. It's awesome to be here, honestly. Yeah, doing the stunts. I love the idea of like that we get to get dirty, like we get to get our hands dirty, we have to carry stuff. I mean, even just the SCBAs, like those things weigh about 25 pounds. You know, you're jumping off the trucks with them. You're doing stuff. Those are real oxygen masks that we're wearing. Like none of that's fake. You know, we're putting holes in walls. We're venting ceilings ourselves. You know, yeah. You know, Mouch drives. Tony drives. I think it. You know, we have another firefighter that drives our engine, but I mean, it's all there. You know, when I was holding Severide up in part of episode 2, you know, like that was legit his weight. So it's one of those things where you don't, it's not really playing around, you know, you really get to go up. You know, one of the first days I was here, I was just on set watching in episode 1101 and watching Gallo's character and Kid go up the aerial, you know, to the house, you know, like that's legit. Like they're doing that. And I think as an actor, you gotta, if you didn't realize it before you got here, it becomes very apparent and you either are excited about it or not. I personally love it. Like I'm a guy who jumps out of planes. So like it's one of those things that I'm completely down for. You know, getting to be able to bring like fights into things, like it's an awesome experience to do.
Yeah, and I've heard too that even your just the team that's behind you, the production team. I mean, you've got these amazing folks that have worked on like The Dark Knight and all these like hardcore Chicago-based films that are on set with you. Really, I mean, it's very realistic. So, have you had a chance to experience a full-on Chicago winter yet? Because I lived in Chicago for a few years in college. I know how brutal those things can be, and I always tease the PD cast that they're rolling around in like t-shirts and flannels in below freezing weather. But how have you experienced it yet? I think people would find that fun and fascinating.
Yeah. Well, one, Midwest Stunts is awesome. So like they really set us up for success. So I just want to give them some love because they deserve it. The Ricks, it's an amazing family and it's an awesome group. They make sure that we're safe so we can do all this stuff. But as far as Chicago winters, I have not experienced one yet. I'm excited and cautiously optimistic that I'll enjoy it. I like the cold. I've lived in Seattle before, which is
Okay.
as cold as here in Chicago, but you know, I've glimpsed that. I've always been someone who enjoys the snow. Even though I grew up in Texas, where we didn't get much snow, I've always been someone who enjoys it. So, you know, just got to put on more layers. It's not a big deal.
Right. Well, with all of the gear that you're wearing and the oxygen mask, I think you'll be just fine. I mean, you seem like you'll be okay. One last question or so here. I think your journey into acting and storytelling is extremely fascinating. Because it's different for everybody, but where did that move come for you, uh, Jake, as far as growing up in Texas, being in Seattle, and really your first interest or move into acting? Like, how did that spark for you in particular?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting road. Definitely. You know, like you said, I think everybody has their own unique path to this career. You either know at a young age or you find it somewhere along the line. And I was definitely the latter. I grew up playing sports. I grew up in a town called Aquila, Texas. It's a
Okay.
tiny town of about 136 people. And, you know, graduated like 15, like very small town, know everyone, all that good stuff. Played sports. And then one year, my, my principal, who's also the assistant football coach and also the guy running One Night Play, asked me, he's like, hey, you need this credit. Why don't you come do this? And so I did. I ended up playing the Reverend and the importance of being earnest, and that was the first little bite. But you know, I went on to do the safe thing. I became an engineer, worked for Boeing for a couple of years. That's what I was doing up in Seattle. I was doing stress analysis on all their big body planes. It just wasn't, you know, I didn't wake up excited like I wanted to. And I started performing up there. First, like music, I was just playing open mics and singing. And then I auditioned for some things and booked them up there in Seattle, booked a play, started studying theater. And about 6 months after that, I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, if this is what makes me excited to live, to get up every day, I need to get to LA. And so there I went. You know, I had some great experiences in Seattle, but it needed to be, I needed to be in LA.
Yeah, I mean, what a journey. I always say this to everybody that I talk to in this business. It's just so different than I think anything else that anybody could ever do.
Yeah.
It's not a typical job, but that old, classic saying, if you do something you love, you're never going to work a day in your life. And I think that's true because, and I get that vibe from you and the rest of your castmates on this show, because you just all seem to have so much fun and the chemistry is really real. You know what I'm saying? There's like no mistake about that. Okay, so the big question is, we've met Sam. We're getting to know this character. We see how he kind of is trying to fit into the Firehouse 51, and he's got this deal going on with his captain, his lieutenant. What is one thing that the fans, that you would want your fans and this show fans to kind of know about your character that maybe we don't know, as far as like a backstory that you've kind of created for yourself? Not spoiling anything
Yeah.
necessarily, but maybe kind of something that we might go, oh, I didn't know that about him.
I think the thing that, because I can't really talk a whole lot about everything.
Of course, no, absolutely.
The thing that really, like, what I would love, what I think I've learned from Sam is that, people have their past, and those pasts aren't always beautiful. They're not always easy. They're not always ideal. And so when you go into this family, this new family, you know, not everyone has earned the right to know every piece of you. And I
Yeah.
think like Sam is a guy who expects, doesn't like, will give you what he'll give you 100% when he's supposed to, and when it's his job, and when it's right. But he's also willing to like set some boundaries, and be like, hey, we haven't got there yet. That's not a part of this. You don't get to just jump to home base. We got to go to first and second, third, first. And he, that's something I think is important. Like, I'm not always great at, Jake's not always great at setting boundaries, but I think Sam is. I think he's got a rough way of doing it at times, which isn't ideal for other people's experience. But at the same time, like, I can back him up. I would stand behind him and say, hey, look, you're not there yet. You don't get to know that. And I hope that everyone can see that, as we go through this, and he opens up and becomes closer with different characters on the show, because we definitely have a lot of fun, man. There's some great scenes coming for everyone to see. It's not all perfect, but there's some fun and some great relationships that get forged through some hard experiences that everyone's going to see soon. And I think we'll start to uncover the layers of Sam, and everyone's going to, start to understand why he's as careful as he is to let people in.
Yeah, well, that definitely comes through. And when we did the all call press day for the show, people were not joking when they said this season is going to start out with a bang, and it has just been one heck of a ride so far.
Yeah.
It's been a real pleasure chatting with you. I'm very excited for you and the rest of the cast. This show and all the One Chicago shows,
Yeah.
I personally feel, are some of the best on television. And I joke with the press and the PR for NBC. I'm like, we got to make these shows last forever, because the day they die is the day my show ends. I'm joking, but thank you so much, Jake, for your time. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Of course, Brett. Thanks for having me on. Anytime.
Absolutely.